Hey guys, it's me, Amaterasu, back with another part 2, Naruto, Tenshikage, aka, what if Naruto created his own village? Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the video, but without further ado, roll the intro.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
My wheels got in my bag and I got all my feels. I'm getting this paper, I'm stacking a meal. I'm with your hoe in the house on the hills. Yeah. I'ma keep it real, had to sacrifice to try to get my bands up. Shorty wanna fuck with me, she see me on the camera. She said she in love with me, but really I can't stand her. She just want part of this life cause she see me on the ground.
Chapter 11, The Hogs of War. Senji scowled and swatted at a fly that buzzed around his face. The persistent insect just avoided his blow and continued to pester him. With a whispered oath, Senji sliced the fly in half with the demon dagger Mabry had given him. He twirled the knife and slipped it back into his belt. His eyes took in the meadow. Their prey hadn't shown up as yet, if it even existed. Mr. Mabry had regaled them last night of a story of the largest boar he had ever seen inhabiting these woods. How no hunter could ever catch it, or spear it. This of course had piqued the interest of Naruto, Senji, and Nagi. Although Senji suspected the entire reason for the story had been to get them interested in the first place. He looked across the meadow to the large oak tree on the far side. He couldn't see him, but he knew Naruto was by that tree. Across to the left, completing an almost equilateral triangle of the three of them was Nagi, somewhere in the shadows. Mabry had pointed out this meadow and the hoof prints all over it, fresh ones, large ones, so the three of them decided to wait for it to show up again. Mabry had laughed and told them he'd wait by the wagon for the day, but by morning he'd be continuing on to Tengoku. Senji smiled. He genuinely liked Milford Mabry. The man was fatherly. He took care of the three new orphans they picked up as if they were his own children. He had a huge supply of fresh children's clothing and he'd provided them with such. After a little talking and laughter, the kids had opened up about how they came to be on the streets. Miran's father had been killed, while her mother and herself were sold into slavery. Her mother had bought her freedom somehow and given her the only possession she had, a gold coin on a shoestring. Miran cried as she told the story. Her powers had not manifested until she was on the streets for a year until she realized she could see faster than people could move, and that she herself could move as fast as she could see. Genosuke was actually blinded by his parents when he was a baby. Apparently he used to have one blue and one brown eye. In his village that was a sign of evil and his parents were afraid he'd bring wrath down on the family. He found out their treachery one night when his dad came home drunk and that had been all he needed to run away from home. He'd long known he could send chakra pulses out to see his surroundings. They allowed him to see things in a full 360 degrees of vision. He learnt to fight on the streets because a blind kid was always picked on. Siren couldn't remember anything from before the streets. His first memories were of being in a box in an alley. He only survived out of sheer luck. An old homeless man had taken him in up until he himself died a few years ago. His water transformation was more instinct than a purposeful skill. Senji couldn't help but be impressed with the quality of people Naruto was drawing to his village. These kids alone had immense potential to be great warriors. Then there was Nagi. Senji had to admit, the addition of Nagi to the team kind of completed them. A three-man cell was just more efficient. They now had three specialized skills on this team. Stealth with Nagi's shadow move technique, melee combat with Senji's sword techniques, and aside from a healthy all-around quality to him, Naruto was a Mass Effect person. The guy has now single-handedly wiped 2 towns off the face of the map. Senji thought. Yes, they now seemed perfectly balanced, and Nagi just fit in with the team dynamic. They just needed to get him a white suit and an armband now. Senji smiled and settled back in his spot, waiting for the boar. Nagi grimaced as the midday sun beat down upon him. He wiped the sweat from his brow, the dreadlocks he sported now tied back so as not to fall in his face. Once Milford Mabry had told them the story, Senji and Naruto had no choice but to hunt the boar. It was obvious. He grinned. It certainly was nice to meet kindred spirits. Nagi hadn't been this comfortable with anyone in a very long time. It felt like friendship. It had certainly been a while. From the moment Naruto hadn't even blinked at his dark skin, Nagi knew something was different about him. Everywhere he went in the unnamed country his skin was considered a curse. The superstitious and uneducated people would hunt him, shun him and curse him. Naruto accepted him and offered him a home. Nagi sighed. This heat really was unbearable. Naruto scanned the brush carefully from his position perched high in the oak tree. He knew where Nagi and Senji were, so he didn't need to look in those directions. He did anyway though, in case the boar snuck up on them. He didn't want his friends hurt. He smiled. It was nice to have friends, a home to go back to. A sigh of contentment escaped his lips. He had gotten some memories from a few clones that had popped. They'd been gone 2 weeks already, and his clones couldn't be expected to last this long. They still had though, only now beginning to pop. So Naruto knew where the construction had reached. He also knew about the orphanage arriving with Tsunade and Sakura. He was honestly excited to see Sakura again. Even though a small bit of shame couldn't help but creep its way into his thoughts. How would she react to seeing him? He'd been kicked out of their village for failing to bring back Sasuke. A promise he had made to her. A promise he had broken. Mabry had been delighted to hear that his orphanage had been moved successfully and that the children were safe and being taken care of. He even approved of the starting up of the Warrior Academy. They won't be children forever. One thing I always teach my kids is to protect your own and protect the weak. Training them just gives them the power to back up those words. And quote. He had said. Naruto agreed. A rustling in the shrubbery brought his attention back to the present. Out of the bushes strode the largest boar Naruto had ever seen. It stood easily 6 feet tall from hoof to shoulder. Its tusks were 3 feet long and curled in slightly. The edge looked razor sharp even from here. None of that was the most outstanding feature though. Both Nagi and Senji's eyes threatened to bulge out of their sockets. The boar had shimmering gold fur. Naruto, Senji and Nagi all grinned. This would indeed be a prized catch. The boar approached the center of the clearing and just stood there. Senji felt a single drop of sweat drip down his forehead. Now, Nagi shouted as he threw a handful of small exploding tag behind the boar, not trying to hit him but to drive him forward. It worked well. The huge beast lurched forward in an impossibly fast run, straight towards Senji. Senji leapt from the brush and swung with his sword. The idea was that if it went towards Senji he would use his swords to slay the beast. If it went towards Naruto he would use a jutsu. That was the plan anyway. Senji's sword slices cut through the empty space the boar had been a second ago. The boar had sped up incredibly fast and was now cutting to the left, towards Naruto. Naruto, it's coming your way. Senji shouted. The animal left clouds of dust behind with each hoof strike. Naruto dropped from the tree, intending to land directly on the boar's back with a Rasengan. He too missed as it dodged again, and ended spinning back into the middle of the clearing. Naruto, Nagi, and Senji now flanked the animal that just stood there and watched them. Just ease up on him, try to get it whichever way it goes. And quote. Senji said. As if on cue, the boar lunged towards Nagi. He didn't have any weapons to use against the animal except more exploding tags, so he used one and melted into the shadows. The tag landed in front of the rampaging animal. As he ran over it, the tag exploded. Naruto and Senji saw the animal get thrown up into the air, but it didn't look damaged, it just looked mad as hell. On the arc back down, the golden boar twisted in mid-air and vanished into thin air. Naruto and Senji who were racing towards it stood in disbelief. Where did it go? Naruto asked. From behind them they heard the crashing of hoofs and turned in time to see the angry animal rushing at them, tusks lowered. They barely managed to dodge out of the way of those razor-sharp tusks. The boar raced past, but instead of turning to come back, it disappeared into thin air again. Naruto and Senji, now joined by Nagi, looked around frantically. They stood back to back, looking all around for the next attack. How did this happen? Nagi asked incredulously. Aren't we supposed to be hunting it? Senji scowled. That Mabry. The boar appeared in thin air to their right and charged again. They jumped up high, only to see the boar below disappear and then see the boar thundering across the ground again and jumping into the air after them like a missile. In mid-air it's really hard to dodge attacks. Naruto pushed both Senji and Nagi away from him and braced to take the full impact of the attack himself. It never came. As it should have hit, the boar disappeared. The trio landed and looked around the eerily quiet clearing. I think it's gone. And quote. Nagi said. He then promptly walked over to Naruto and slapped him behind his head. What the hell kind of move was that? Senji nodded, also cross. What's the big idea pushing us out of the way like that? Naruto shrugged. Was an impulse thing. I can heal, you guys can't. I can take the most damage and walk away. Nagi shook his head in disgust and walked a little distance off. He wasn't expecting the response to actually make sense. The 3 unsuccessful hunters walked back to the wagons. Mabry couldn't stop laughing. As they told the story his smile got bigger and bigger until he could hold it and no more. They sat around a table inside his wagon, lights from candles and lanterns illuminating the room. So what was that? Nagi asked. That wasn't an ordinary boar. Mabry laughed some more. Well, of course it isn't. Didn't anyone think to ask why no one has caught or slain it as yet? He leaned back in the chair and interlocked his hands behind his head. That was a forest spirit. We're on the outskirts of a giant forest that's thousands of years old. The spirit appears to determine if travelers are welcome in this section of its forest. It cannot be killed. It does however kill those it deems unworthy. He clapped the boys on their backs. I guess you're worthy, he said with a hearty laugh. It's a majestic beast, isn't it? I remember the first time I fought with it. We sparred for hours until the sun came down. Mabry sighed. Good old days. Naruto frowned. How many times have you battled with it? Mabry shrugged. Who counts time spent with an old friend? Each time we meet I learn something new. Senji nodded. He understood that. Naruto thought back to the hunt and realized the boar had used some very specific tactics. It charged the only unarmed and therefore weakest one of them. It herded them into a small group. It drove them into the air and attacked them there where it was harder to dodge. He realized the spirit was in control the entire time. Naruto wondered if there was any way for him to incorporate those tactics into his style. Well, Quat. Mabry continued. Now that we have permission to pass, it's a straight line to Tengoku by tomorrow. Tengoku Pop, another of Naruto's clones, puffed out of existence, letting the wheelbarrow it was carrying crash down to the ground. Jiraiya frowned. That was the 10th one today. At this rate they'd all be gone by tomorrow and construction work would need to cease. They really counted on those clones for cheap labor. Jiraiya shrugged and went back to his book, scribbling down ideas that came to him. He looked over to where Ma and Pa Toad were meditating. They had said they needed to feel the natural energy here in Tengoku to determine just what level of risk Naruto would be exposed to. They had been sitting there for hours. He could hear the sounds of children playing not far away. The orphanage was right in the shadow of the White Tower, put there specifically because they knew how Naruto felt about orphans. Across the street, which at this point was nothing more than markings, was the area set aside for the Warrior Academy. No work had begun on this at all, so for now it was just a training ground. Tora had put together a starting syllabus for the warriors in training to follow and divided up all the interested children into levels. It was a lot of organizing, but he had the help of Hiraka and Sakura. Guerrero was hard at work laying down designs into the stone walls and floor. They were special markings to increase strength and durability. Just then, he heard a drip, then another one. He peeked over the top of his book with a smile. They've done it. Within seconds the drop became a torrent as running water was brought to the village. Jiraiya heard a cheer go up from the residents of Tengoku as the pipes all filled with water and flowed out. The clones nearest to him jumped up in joy. Jiraiya smiled. The village was coming along. Young Jiraiya and Quat. Pa Toad said, breaking him from his reverie. We agree to start Naruto's training in sage arts. The natural energy on this island is incredible. It rivals that of Mount Mayuboku. Jiraiya nodded. Naruto would be sad to leave this village again for so long, but it's important that he learns how to control it before he accidentally discovers natural energy. Ma Toad shook her head. No, you misunderstand. We will train Naruto here. There is more than enough natural energy here to help speed him along. Also, he has a wind affinity and this is the perfect place for him to learn, especially if he's already feeling its presence. Jiraiya was shocked, but nodded in acceptance. He'd talk with Naruto when he got back. Kenshiro had been a member of Jiraiya's spy network for close to 10 years. It was not particularly rewarding work. Jiraiya didn't pay. It was all solely done for two reasons. One was a life debt to Jiraiya. The Sannin had saved him from a noose many years ago. The other was sheer boredom. If all he had in his life was his store and his nagging wife, Kenshiro thought he'd have killed himself by now. The door opened to his store and a timid-looking man with round glasses walked in nervously. A customer. Kenshiro thought. He approached the man and smiled broadly at him. How can I help you today? He asked the customer. Hammer? Nails? Paint? And Quat. The man stammered.
I have a Toad problem.
Can you help with that? He looked at Kenshiro cautiously. Ken sighed and his face instantly became more serious. It's okay, no one else is in the store. So you want to reach Jiraiya? Can I ask why? The man nodded. Because we heard that his apprentice has started a new village. A place where people can start over, not live in fear. My family, I want us to go there. Kenshiro smiled at the man. You're the second one this week. And Quat. He slipped a piece of paper into the man's hand. This is a map. Be at that location in 1 week's time. Walk with any belongings you like. Thank you. The man stared incredulously at the map and turned to walk out. Don't thank me. I might join you if my wife drives me crazy enough. And Quat. Kenshiro said with a jovial smile and got back behind the counter. Kakashi jumped from branch to branch, feeling the presence behind him more than knowing it was there. He changed direction and jumped again, moving impossibly fast. He hoped to avoid a fight if he could. He didn't want to battle a Konoha nin if he could help it. The presence behind him followed his turn. It has to be Anbu. He had left Konoha not an hour before he realized he was being followed. He had immediately left the trail and took off into the trees. But it looked like he would have to face it sooner rather than later. A second presence suddenly appeared to his left, moving to intercept. Kakashi swore to himself. The pursuer must have radioed for an intercept. Kakashi turned in midair just in time to dodge a well-thrown brace of shuriken. The figure who had intercepted him was throwing projectiles at a very fast rate from behind cover. Kakashi flipped over and twisted, avoiding shuriken and kunai by the dozens. The style of fighting made it obvious to him who he was fighting, which meant the one pursuing him was obvious as well. As he neared a clearing, Kakashi veered off. The last thing a ninja really wanted to do was fight in the open if he could help it. With the two Anbu on his trail, Beku and Akame, he was sure of it, even less so. In the open he'd be an easy target. A slight whistle was all the warning he had to jump high in the air, to dodge a windmill shuriken slicing through the branch he had just been on. That was Beku again, a weapons expert. As he arced back from his jump over the canopy of trees, he felt a heat blast approaching him. A large fireball had erupted from the forest racing towards him. Kakashi executed a kawarami and switched places with a log at the last second. He knew it wouldn't fool them, but it should buy him some seconds. From his hiding place in the bushes he did a quick series of hand signs and called on his summons. This was a tight spot. He could easily defeat these two Anbu, but he didn't want to hurt anyone. His summons in this case was two large ninja dogs. With a series of signals he communicated to them what he wanted done. In a flash, they ran off into the bushes. Kakashi sighed, then glanced up in time to see a scythe cutting down towards him. He rolled backwards, feeling the blade pass an inch away from his skin. He palmed the ground and spun, kicking the legs out from under Beku. The Anbu, instead of falling, did a cartwheel and landed back on his feet. The scythe never left his hands. He swung it again, across this time, to take off Kakashi's head. Kakashi ducked under and threw a smoke pellet to the ground. He pulled off another kawarami and appeared several yards to the right. A stream of fire arced its way towards him, scorching trees and shrubbery in its path. He rolled out of the way again. Akame was a fire type, adept at creating fireballs much like the Uchiha clan, but maybe with less power. But he made up for it with accuracy. Both Anbu were fairly new recruits, which made Kakashi all the more cautious. They would be overzealous to prove themselves. "Surrender, Kakashi," Beku said from a branch high up, 50 yards away. "You cannot escape us." Kakashi sighed. They needed more experience. One of his nin dogs rushed Beku and bit into his left leg, hard. Beku screamed in pain and both he and the dog fell off the branch. Kakashi released the summons before it hit the ground, not wanting any of his dogs hurt. He heard a curse from far behind him. That would be Akame. He raced towards the sound, determined to incapacitate the man without hurting him seriously. Fireballs came rapid fire towards him as he dodged and ran full tilt towards where he now knew Akame to be. He burst from a bush and jumped up to the branch Akame was on. The new Anbu panicked and body switched with a log. Kakashi landed on the branch he had been on and looked around. A yelp told him that his other dog had found Akame and had also bitten him in the legs. Kakashi nodded to himself and released that summons as well. He then took off back west, heading as far from Konoha as he could get, glad he hadn't hurt anyone seriously. The city of Yomi, land of the dead, amidst a city full of decrepit stone houses and street bonfires, stood a tall black stone tower. Smoke and screaming wrapped its way around the tower, as the dead and dying in the streets cried out in agony. This was Yomi, the capital city of the land of the dead. Demons and ghouls and monsters of the most horrible nightmares roamed this land, living as you will for the day that they could escape this cursed island and destroy the world. Fortunately for the world, they were for the most part kept in their own land by the need for utter darkness. The slightest bit of daylight would destroy them. Even the meager light of the moon would remove them from this plane of existence. There were very few times they could venture past their own borders, kept eternally dark by the clouds of smoke and magic of the darkest kind. Some demons found ways to exist beyond the borders. In fact, over the years, several excursions into the world by former residents of Yomi had resulted in massive worldwide destruction. However, humans had been stronger than they expected and bound or destroyed those soldiers. It was the most powerful of those soldiers that was being discussed now. "Kyubi!" Magnon raged, slamming his gauntlet fist down onto the arms of his throne. The stone and bone chair shuddered at the impact. "Yes, my lord." Dadanquat. Ji-hoon spat out. He was bound in a human and helped the human defeat the 6th Squadron Horde. He showed us no mercy. Magnon scowled in disgust at Ji-hoon. Magnon was an imposing figure, standing 11 feet tall, clad in dark red armor, smoke rising out of creases and cracks. His eyes a black pit that threatened to suck you in. A mane of white hair adorned his hardened features, battle scars on his face belying years of war. You didn't get to be Lord of Yomi through family ties, you earned it by defeating all challengers. The Kyubi was the next challenger for my throne. You think that a century away from Yomi would lessen his skills? You were a fool to throw away a horde over a personal insult. 3 human children you were corrupting were not worth your petty vengeance. Dadanquat. Magnon growled at Ji-hoon. The land of the dead did not suffer weakness or defeat lightly. Magnon clenched his fists and Ji-hoon's left arm crunched into dust. He fell to the ground writhing in pain. "I will not kill you yet, you foul worm. I need to know where Kyubi is. That is an open wound that needs to be cauterized immediately. And quat. He pointed his metal fingers at the sobbing lesser demon in front of him. You are adept at maneuvering amongst the humans. The filthy human blood we put in you keeps you half human enough to live outside our lands. You will find this vessel of Kyubi and you will tell me where he is. Naruto slept fitfully that night, awakening inside the familiar long dark sewer. Ahead he saw the bars and the paper seal that held his prisoner at bay. The growling and snapping behind the bars let him know that the Kyubi was upset. That filthy half-blood dare put his hands on me, on my vessel. The fox snarled and howled, raging against the wind. Naruto let him rage for a few minutes before interjecting. What were those things, and how did they know you? Kyubi howled again and glared down at Naruto. Those were lesser demons, filthy half-bloods and ghouls, natives of my real homeland, the land of the dead. Naruto walked a little closer to the cage. That Ji-hoon thing, he knew your name. Kyubi laughed. All lessers know my name. I would have challenged for the seat of Yomi itself had I not gotten the opportunity to leave that wretched land. Naruto didn't really understand but nodded. So what does this mean? The fox looked at Naruto and lowered its massive red head down to his level. Since you failed to kill him, that lesser will have reported to Magnon. That means, you imbecile, that the hordes of hell will now be looking for me. I was Magnon's greatest threat. He now knows I live, even if it is inside a vessel. They will hunt you down and they will kill you to get to me. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the demon in front of him. What do I do? Kyubi growled. You get stronger on your own. I cannot give you any more chakra than I already do. Can't give you any special powers or anything like that. If you break my seal I will be free, of course, and I will decimate them. Remember that. When your loved ones are in danger, the only way you can save them is to set me free. Naruto woke up sweating. Chapter 12. The Calm. Ah, damn you Mabriwi. Nagi screamed as he careened up the wind tunnel to Tengoku. The capoeira fighter had refused to jump in when the mechanics of how he was supposed to get to the city were made clear to him. When pressed for a reason, he refused to say. That is until that bastard Mabry had guessed he was afraid of heights, laughed, then picked him up and threw him into the ravine. With a puff he burst through the cloud bank and landed unceremoniously on his face, his rear end high in the air behind him. He muttered some choice curse words he had picked up in his travels and pushed up onto his hands. This place is Amazi. His thoughts were interrupted as Senji burst through the clouds as well, and headed right for him. With a yelp, Nagi rolled out of the way just as Senji landed. Naruto grinned down on the ground with Mabry and the three kids. He hopped back on top the wagon and shouted down to Mabry. Well, what are you waiting for? Mabry laughed and settled down, holding the reins and clipped them, sending his entire wagon into the ravine and letting the wind pick it up and shoot it into the air. Somehow, whether through some form of magic, chakra control or perhaps sheer force of will, Mabry managed to keep the wagon perfectly straight as it shot up into the cloud banks and his mules perfectly calm. Seconds later the largest wagon the world has ever seen was landing with a whoomp on the cloud banks of Tengoku. Its giant wheels grabbing a foothold on the white surface and immediately rolling forward towards the dirt shore. Naruto laughed and stood on top of the wagon, looking at the progress of the White Tower, the orphanage and street markings. His clones had sent along the memories, but it really didn't have the same impact as seeing it for yourself. He shouted at the top of his lungs, sending a flock of rare birds flying out of the treetops. I'm home. Later that evening, Naruto sat at large table in the first floor of the White Tower. Around the table sat Jiraiya, Tenchi, Tsunade, Old Man Tora, Garera, Sakura, Hiraka, Senji, and Nagi. Standing on one end of the table was Milford Mabry, grinning like a madman. Tsunade, I have to hand it to you, you weren't kidding. And quat. He looked out the opening where eventually a glass pane window would fit and stared out as hundreds of brand spanking new Naruto clones worked feverishly to make up for lost time. Some were also playing with the children at the orphanage while the clones working nearest were scowling in jealousy. This place is mind-blowing. Tsunade smiled and nodded. Spirits were high around the table. Yes, it truly is a one-of-a-kind location. Naruto, you couldn't have found a better place. Naruto grinned sheepishly. So how's everything going here? I mean, my clones gave me a good bit of information, but they were mostly just workers, so what else should we know about? Jiraiya nodded in satisfaction. Naruto was becoming more mature as the responsibility of building this village brick by brick was teaching him. Well, Mabry here has arranged our food and medicine supply line. Jiraiya nodded to Mabry. That's right, Mabry replied, his voice taking on a much more serious tone. Once a month a caravan with goods will be at the ravine waiting for pickup. Cash on delivery. And quat. He cocked his head to the side. How are we paying for things now, by the way? We? Tenchi asked him with a sly grin. Have you decided to join our ranks? Mabry looked back at the orphanage and sighed. I've always been afraid that one day when I'm traveling some warlord would find my children. You've offered them a safe place to live. For that you have my allegiance. I will fight for you. Sakura cleared her throat. I hope this isn't rude, but I've been meaning to ask. You're not a ninja, but when you told me about your fight with the Hokage, I got the impression it wasn't a one-sided battle. Naruto looked wide-eyed. You fought with the old man? His expression was one of confusion. Mabry laughed. We had a disagreement over how one particular urchin in his village was being treated. We worked it out. And quote. Naruto seemed to take that explanation, but Jiraiya and Tsunade laughed. Worked it out? Tsunade asked. You battled each other for the better part of an afternoon. Shizune was in Konoha at the time and she told me all about it. You were both bloodied and tired and it was only after Sensei used his summon staff to knock you out did it end. Naruto, Sakura, Nagi and Senji stared wide-eyed at Mabry, seeing him in a whole new light. Mabry shrugged. Like I said, we worked it out. What's your fighting style? Naruto asked excitedly. We already have ninja, samurai, a luchador, so what's your style? Can we use it to teach the students in the academy? Jiraiya nodded. Mabry is a down and dirty street fighter. Naruto. Toe-to-toe one of the toughest bastards you will ever meet. The man is a tank, just takes damage like there's no tomorrow but dishes it back out too. Mabry sighed and sat down. When you learn to fight on the streets you just learn what works and what doesn't. I don't have a style, Naruto. I just win because I have to. Naruto nodded and looked pensive. Jiraiya cleared his throat and changed the topic. Well, we should formally welcome the new additions to our Archangel fighting force. Sakura and Nagi. And quote. A smattering of clapping accompanied Jiraiya passing Tengoku armbands down the table to them. Now, I have a couple things to talk about, Jiraiya continued. Firstly, I would like to broach the subject of leadership. And quote. The table went quiet, unsure of where this was going. I would like to formally ask if we will accept Naruto as the village leader, Jiraiya said in a deep voice. You could have heard a pin drop as the wind whistled in through the window frame. All eyes turned to the suddenly very still Naruto. I second that, Tenchi said. Naruto glanced at him too, his eyes getting wider and wider. Wait. And quote. Naruto managed to stammer out. He stood up. The village isn't complete as yet. I'm still learning how to get stronger, how to deal with so many things. I can't possibly be ready to lead this village. And quote. His voice was plaintive. This was a dream of his, but to have it thrust upon him, like this. Naruto, Tsunade said in a motherly voice, seeking to calm him. No one is ever ready for the mantle of responsibility. What matters in a leader is the ability to inspire and lead. Senji grinned. You have that in spades, Naruto. You saved my life and gave me a purpose. Nagi nodded in agreement. You saved my life too. I'll follow you. Jiraiya chimed in. We all have faith in you, Naruto. You will get stronger, you will get smarter. Those things come with time. But your heart is already in the right place. No one is saying you will have to do this alone. Tsunade and I are volunteering to be your advisors, and Tenchi will continue to teach you. Naruto sighed in relief. Well, okay, once you guys are still around. They all laughed at that one. So are we in agreement? Sakura's eyes became teary, realizing her teammate's dream was about to come true. Naruto is now officially the leader of the Heavenly Village, Tengoku, Jiraiya said with a sense of finality. He took out a gold version of the armband and passed it down to Naruto. Naruto held it up, the light catching the gold and gleaming back at him. Tears streamed down his face. Tenchi cocked an eyebrow at Jiraiya. Well, he'd just look stupid under a cage's hat, wouldn't he? Plus he's not a kage. We're not a recognized village as yet, Jiraiya said by way of response. After a few congratulations to Naruto, they continued with the business at hand. I have my spy network spreading word that families that are looking for somewhere safe to live can find such a place. We need citizens to inject life into this village. Now the spies are checking on all the families, and we'll be going to meet them in a week's time at a village 20 miles to the west of the mountains. Mabry and I can handle it. Wait, Naruto spoke up, his eyes going to the armband he hadn't put on as yet. I want to come too. I want to know every member of this village personally. The adults in the room all smiled. Naruto would grow into a fine leader. That's great, Naruto, but maybe we should work on your clothing? Tsunade suggested. Sakura nodded vigorously, an evil gleam in her eyes. Naruto looked down at his white clothes which were brand new. So what was Obasan talking about? Mabry nodded. It's a good battle uniform, but it's not very statesmanlike. As the village leader you have to be looked upon with respect, command a certain level of awe and admiration. Senji looked across at his friend. Well, Naruto, I'm sorry but I have to agree. All the big shots will look down on you dressed like a common warrior. They'll just see a kid. They won't see a leader. Sakura chimed in. Now that white suit that Senji-san is wearing, that's the kind of thing you should wear. Senji smiled. I'd gladly donate this suit. I have others like it I got as payment for a small job from a tailor. Maybe someone can tailor it to fit you, Naruto. The look of abject horror on Naruto's face was priceless as Sakura, Hiraka and Tsunade dragged him out of the room to get measured. Senji stood on the platform that would be the 5th floor of the White Tower. The view was spectacular. The entire island could be seen from this height, above the canopy of the trees that grew here, above the clouds. It felt as if he was at the highest point in the world. He looked down at all the Naruto clones working as hard as ever to build this city. Some were stamping the main road flat as they could in preparation for the cobblestones Guerrera had prepared. Others were erecting poles that would connect the orphanage, then the White Tower, to the power station that wasn't operational as yet. Soon they'd have electricity to add to the already working plumbing. He saw Hiraka and Sakura talking under a shady tree by the training grounds in Apos. He hadn't spoken to her since she'd arrived in Tengoku. Senji knew he should but just couldn't bring himself to do it. I can face down an army of demon warriors, but one girl ... and quat. He sighed and turned to head back downstairs and have a talk with Nagi. 20 miles to the west of Tengoku, Kakashi stared up at sight before him. A caravan of people had camped out in the valley Jiraiya had told him was the rendezvous point. At least 20 families with what looked like every worldly possession that they had. Kakashi approached very carefully. It wouldn't do to frighten these people. Stop. A girl with a crossbow ordered him. She couldn't have been more than 16, with her hair in pigtails and her white dress spotless despite what had to have been living in that caravan for a while. Kakashi obliged and put his hands up, smiling as best he could under the mask. The girl scowled at him. What's your business here? She demanded. I'm here to meet a friend, Kakashi said as matter of fact as possibly. These people may be here by accident or design, but he wasn't about to give any information away that wasn't necessary. Do you mean the Toad Master? She asked, the hostility fading from her voice. Kakashi nodded and lowered his hands as he saw her breathe a sigh of relief and lower the crossbow. We're here to meet him as well, she said, motioning to the wagons arranged in a defensive circle. But he's not due for a couple more days. You're welcome to wait with us. Kakashi smiled at the girl. She was pretty when she wasn't pointing a weapon at him. Sure, if you don't mind. My name is Hatake Kakashi. She smiled right back at him. I'm Calamity. Yes, it's a nickname. No, don't ask. And no, I won't tell you my real name. And quat. She turned on her heel and walked back inside the circle, leaving Kakashi stunned and grinning. Palace of the Fire Daimyo. The lone figure dropped soundlessly to the floor behind the guard and planted a kunai into the back of his skull. He died soundlessly and fell forward, but before he hit the floor the intruder was streaking like a crow straight down the corridor. For this part of the mission, he was not supposed to attract attention, so he did his best to be invisible. His all-black clothes, his face hidden behind a dark metal mask, only his eyes showing, all designed to make him hard to see in the dark. 3 dead guards later, he stood at the door to the daimyo's office where lords and ladies of the court would meet with him. Certainly some would be there. It wasn't that late in the day that the place would be emptied, which was perfect as this part of the plan required witnesses. Swiftly he dug into his pouch and pulled on a headband that declared him a ninja of Iwagakure. With a sharp intake of breath he crashed through the big oak doors and rolled into the room. The intelligence had been right. At least 10 courtesans were present, as well as 5 guards. He dodged the attacks coming from the guards and flung kunai at them in a spread pattern. It was meant to distract more than kill, although it did have the effect of taking out 2 of them. No matter, he was within striking distance of his target now. The daimyo stood stunned at what was happening before him. The intruder leapt high into the air and bellowed the rehearsed script, for the glory of Iwa. He plunged his kunai hilt deep into the heart of the fire daimyo amidst the screams of the witnesses. Without stopping, he grabbed the body and jumped out the window. The glass shattered easily and they plummeted to the earth 4 stories below. The intruder positioned the body under his and at the best possible moment jumped up and across using the body as a platform. His fall was by no means smooth, but he was unharmed as he rolled again and headed into the darkness of the alleyways, his mission accomplished flawlessly. Tengoku, so what's the story with you and Naruto? Hiraka asked Sakura. The 2 of them had hit it off right away. Besides being the only girls their age in the village, they genuinely liked each other. Sakura thought Hiraka was a no-nonsense warrior and respected that, and Hiraka thought Sakura was a dedicated kunoichi and medic. Plus they both loved playing with the kids. No story there, Sakura said smiling. We're friends. That's all we'll ever be. And quat. Sakura knew that to be true. Despite his decision, her heart would forever and always belong to Sasuke. What about you and Senji? What's going on there? You guys always seem so awkward around each other, and he never speaks to you. And quat. Sakura asked. Hiraka sighed. He's my fiancé, she replied. What? Sakura exclaimed. You guys are going to get married? Hiraka shook her head. Not until, well, let's say not for a while. Sakura practically growled at Hiraka. Oh no. You're not clamming up on me now. Spill. Hiraka stood up and watched the sun begin to set. 2 years ago, Senji and I were engaged to be married. My father approved of Senji, He was an up-and-coming student of my uncle who was recognized to be the best swordsman in the world. Senji was handsome, dedicated, and loving. Hiraka sighed and sat back down. Senji also loved his brother. The two of them were inseparable. I would have sworn that on our wedding night we'd have had a witness in the room. Sakura blushed at that but motioned for Hiraka to continue. On the morning of our wedding, the school where Senji studied was destroyed. Every person in it massacred. Senji wasn't there. In fact, he didn't even hear about it until he arrived at the wedding. I begged him not to go, but he ran to the school. His brother was killed. My uncle, his sensei, was killed. Children who studied there, all slaughtered. Sakura's eyes brimmed with tears. Senji fell to his knees and cried for his loss. I know my fiancé, his heart broke that day. He told me that very evening that he could not marry me until his brother and sensei had been avenged. I told him do not think he could walk away from me. I'd not let him out of my life. He set out to find the killers anyway. Hiraka looked up at the top of the white tower and was sure she saw Senji's silhouette looking down on them. He's been lost ever since, looking in the wilderness and the Badlands for any clues. He stops by my dad's place every so often. I will not marry anyone else because I know Senji is the one for me. I have to say though, that this is the first time I've seen him genuinely happy. I think he's found a new brother in Naruto. Sakura smiled. Well, Naruto does have that effect on people. She looked around at the village being built around them. He's truly a most unpredictable ninja. Naruto looked at the two frogs in front of him excitedly. Sage arts? His voice had no emotion. His excitement bared open for all to see. Yes, Naruto. Young Jiraiya has told us you are beginning to feel the natural energy around you. Tell me, is this true? Toad asked. Naruto looked pensive for a second and nodded. I feel something. This presence all around. I thought it was the wind. I have a wind affinity, so I thought because of how much wind there is up here, how this island is kept up by the wind, that I was just feeling an abundance. Pa nodded. Yes, what you're feeling is the natural energy of this place. It is not only wind that keeps this island afloat, but unfathomable amounts of chakra flow. Natural energy flows through here like a stream, but because this is what we'll call the center of the world's wind and wind chakra, it pools a bit, allowing the wind to lift the island. It is nature at its most powerful. Ma looked Naruto up and down. You're very young to learn this, Naruto. Sage arts are not to be taken lightly. We need to teach you how to recognize it and learn to control it before natural energy consumes you. Naruto looked scared. That sounds bad. What happens if natural energy consumes me? Pa laughed. You turn into a toad statue, Naruto. The energy is too much for your natural body to handle and you become petrified. Naruto scowled. Why a toad statue? Ma smiled. Because you have the toad contract. Any natural energy that courses through you interacts with the contract. So you take on the form of a toad. If you had a dog contract, you'd become a petrified dog and so on. Naruto grinned and stood up. The training ground they were on was clear of clones, children and all the current residents of Tengoku. The Toad elders had asked for some privacy to have this discussion with Naruto. Well, let's start. I have 1 week before I go to greet some more possible villagers. He pumped his fist in the air, excited to begin. Well, we probably can't teach you much more than to recognize the energy, so hopefully you won't petrify before you come back, Pa said. He pulled out a large stick and smiled at Naruto. Let's begin. Konoha. The Hokage looked down at the city of Konoha. It had begun to take on a darker, more serious feel to it. The carefree and happy lives of the citizens in it seemed to be clouded over by fear and a seriousness that hadn't been there before. Good, he muttered to himself. We're a damned military village, about time these fools recognized that fact. He felt the presence in the room behind him and turned. It was one of his root members, one that had just carried out a particularly sensitive assignment. It is done, Hokage, the man said from behind his mask. Danzo nodded and turned back to look down at Konoha just as lightning flashed and thunder rolled across the village. Now we await word, but we will be going to war soon. Prepare the route. 1 week later, Naruto stretched, not feeling 100% comfortable in the suit he was now wearing. Hiraka was an artist with her needle and thread. It didn't take much to get Senji's suit to look perfect on him. Naruto sighed. He did look a lot more respectable, he supposed, wearing it. His hair was still long though, as no one in the village knew how to cut hair properly. He looked in the mirror and let a small smile escape him. He was starting to look like the face on the Hokage monument in Konoha. He slipped on the gold armband and almost didn't recognize his own reflection. He looked serious. Naruto grinned and walked out to meet his friends. Senji had found a different style suit for himself and Nagi, one that didn't have a collar. Both of them wore the white suites with an elegance that Naruto never thought he'd be able to match. Sakura was talking to Hiraka at the main table when the three of them walked in. She was literally stunned. Naruto looked simply amazing in his new clothes. The other two boys, although she was younger than them, They were Naruto's friends, so she thought of them as boys. Also made her heart beat a little bit faster. Hiruka grinned devilishly. Hope you're not staring at my man Sakura. Sakura smiled back. They make a great trio, don't they? Hiruka laughed. Well, at least this island has some good eye candy. Mabry and Jiraiya walked in and looked over the three boys. They smiled. Now you look like a village leader, Naruto. And you boys cleaned up nicely, Jiraiya said. Nagi looked very proud, dusting his sleeves a bit and adjusting the jacket. We're just born to dress in style. Mabry's booming laugh was heard all through Tengoku. Come children, let's get on my wagon and see how it fares on the ride down. Sakura and Hiruka watched them ride off on the wagon and turned to look at each other. Does it seem to you that those boys are always going off on their own adventures and leaving us behind? Hiruka asked. Sakura nodded forcefully. She turned around and saw who she was looking for. Hey Guerrera, she shouted across the dirt street. You mind if we take off for a couple days? They had been helping out a lot with the orphanage. He smiled and nodded. Sakura glanced towards the white tower and saw Tsunade nod at her with a smile too. With a grin, she and Hiruka launched themselves after the wagon. Wait for us! And quat. Chapter 13, Spirit Wolf. Naruto, Nagi and Senji lay on top of the wagon, shirts open, soaking in the sun. The gentle rocking of the wagon moving through the plains increased their laziness. Mabry steered the wagon cheerily while talking to Jiraiya. Inside, the voices of Sakura and Hiruka could be heard. The two of them had caught up to them before they'd even jumped into the wind stream. Senji was deep in thought. He'd managed to avoid talking to Hiruka since she had joined them in Tengoku, but now they were on a mission, so to speak. It would be awkward to avoid her any further. He could hear snippets of the girls' conversation. Mabry had a large wardrobe of clothing for various ages in his wagon. He explained that most of the orphans he picked up were wearing nothing but rags, so he always had clothes to put on them. Good clothes. Neither Sakura nor Hiruka had changed into what was turning out to be the Archangel uniform of white clothes with the silver armband, so they had excitedly begun digging in Mabry's closet. He could make out small bits, such as Sakura squealing when she found a shirt she loved. Hiruka. With the scarf. Sakura, yes. Matches. Eyes. Hiruka, ha, he'll die. Senji smiled for the briefest of seconds but then frowned. He did miss Hiruka, still loved her even. But she deserved someone who could give her the finer things, and he had a quest to fulfill. Hey boys. Mabry's voice boomed up at them over the wagon canvas. It's just over that hill. Senji sighed and sat up, buttoning up his shirt, seeing his friends do the same. It was time to meet the potential new citizens of Tengoku. Kakashi watched in amazement as the brightest colored and largest wagon he had ever seen in his life crested the hill to the south of their camp. The thing was massive, easily as big as a house, and the huge donkeys pulling it were no less impressive. Within minutes the gigantic wheels brought the wagon to the center of the valley. Over the past few days more families had arrived, some lone people as well. Seems Jiraiya's spy network had done a good job of spreading the word. Steering the wagon was one of the tallest men Kakashi had ever seen, and he recognized him as a magician that Konoha had hosted many years ago. It was said that he got into a friendly spar with the Hokage. Now that had been a sight to behold. Next to him was Jiraiya, looking as smug and carefree as ever. Kakashi could sense the crowds grow behind him as the people started to gather. Out of a flap on the side of the wagon, some stairs extended, and Naruto Uzumaki stepped out. Kakashi had wondered what it would be like seeing his student again after a year. It had startled him to realize almost exactly a year had passed since he'd been expelled from Konoha. He had heard of the changes that Naruto had undergone, but seeing it was something different. His hair had grown longer and wilder, he had gained some height and some more muscles. The clothes he was wearing were startlingly white, with a gold armband that bore the symbol of Tengoku. Kakashi was stunned. Naruto looked so much like his father now, but more than that, he looked like a leader. Behind him two more boys, who had to be a couple years older than Naruto, stepped out. Both wore identical white suits, with the silver armbands of Tengoku. They took up flanking positions behind Naruto, the one with the swords to the right of Naruto and the dark-skinned one to his left. Kakashi noticed the ease with which they slipped into that position naturally. They looked like a team that had been together for years. He felt a pang of pride in his ex-student. Naruto saw Kakashi and all the seriousness melted off his face. Kakashi-sensei, he shouted and ran and hugged the ex-Konoha Jounin. Kakashi took a step back with an oomph escaping him. Naruto squeezed him tightly and Kakashi felt happy. His student clearly had no ill will towards him for what happened in Konoha. Hi Naruto. And quat. Kakashi managed to get out. You seem well. Naruto let him go and smiled at him, stepping back. The two boys behind him smiling as well. I am sensei, thanks. Have you been here long? Kakashi nodded. A few days. Quite a thing you're doing, Naruto. Naruto shrugged happily, not responding. His eyes took in the curious faces of the people gathered. Many of them looked hopeful, some looked lost. Jiraiya walked up and touched Naruto's shoulder. He looked over at the crowd. We will be meeting with each person or family personally to talk to you. Please go back to your tents or wagons. Kakashi would have made a list? He looked over at the Jounin who nodded. Good, so we have your names and our village leader Naruto wants to greet each of you personally. The people looked a little reluctant to go back to their wagons, but did so anyway. Jiraiya turned to Kakashi. Quite a crowd, he said matter-of-factly. The two of them had been communicating quite frequently via toad summons. But a few days had passed and this was more people than he had last heard. At least 100, Kakashi said. More than you estimated, and most of them came in the last 2 days. I expect more will show up while we're here. Mabry walked over. I figure we'll be here for a week to decide who comes and who doesn't. Naruto will make the final decisions with our advice. It's his village, so his final decision. Kakashi nodded. He'd been made aware of the decision to grant Naruto the leader position. He approved wholeheartedly. What criteria will you be using? He asked Naruto. Naruto looked serious. Only people with good hearts. The boys turned as Sakura and Hiraka exited the wagon. Nagi let out a low whistle. Both girls had changed into white clothing with the silver armbands, but the style of clothing was what captivated the boys' attention. Sakura had a short-sleeved white shirt with a Chinese collar similar to the one Nagi and Senji had, but her neckline was much lower, teasing some cleavage. A firm pink coat was affixed over it that matched her hair. A short white skirt with pink trim and knee-high white and pink boots finished off her outfit. She had also found some white gloves that she was still putting on. Hiraka was wearing a white Chinese-style short dress with high collars and red tights underneath. Her red scarf was draped around her neck and flowing in the wind as if it had a life of its own. 2 pins held her hair up in a bun, while she too adjusted gloves her elbow length on her hands. Naruto smiled. You look great, Sakura. You too, Hiraka. Senji nodded as well and looked away. Hiraka made a face at him and grinned at Sakura with a wink. All of them walked into the caravan behind Naruto, to decide who to accept into Tengoku. Naruto's face was crestfallen as he heard the plight of the very first family he interviewed. The father had lost his business, thanks to a raid on the town they lived in. They had been terrorized, his oldest son killed, leaving just him, his wife and his daughter who was 10. They hadn't escaped unscathed though. The particular warlord didn't believe in leaving survivors intact, so they had been scarred in various ways. The daughter had been cut across her cheeks, the mother across her hands, the father had lost an arm. Naruto was incensed and vowed privately to find the person or persons responsible. My trade was as a tailor. But not many people will come to a one-armed tailor. It takes longer to finish my work now. And quote. Tears were in the man's eyes. But if you give me a chance in your new village, I swear I'll work faster than you can believe. Please, I need somewhere to raise my family, to earn a living. Please. Naruto's eyes filled with tears as did his friends. He walked forward and put his hands on the man's shoulders. You will be more than welcome to join our village. Your family will be safe and you can live your life in peace. And quote. Naruto said. Jiraiya frowned a bit at that, but said nothing till they were outside the tent. Naruto, it's all well and good to offer these people hope, but you do realize that we're still a hidden ninja village? It's almost guaranteed that at some point there won't be peace. At some point there will be battles and people could get hurt. I know, sensei, but he doesn't need to hear that right now. And I will do all I can to protect every single man, woman, and child of my village, Naruto replied without missing a step, walking towards the next tent. Kakashi looked on with pride as Naruto went from tent to tent, talking to the families that had been gathered and accepting them into Tengoku. For the most part, Jiraiya's spies had spread the word only to families that would fit the desired mold, but Kakashi had been here for a few days and had his doubts about a few. It was now late evening and Naruto was now entering one such tent. The patriarch of a family of 4 grown sons, the swarthy man had riches draped over him and he reeked of cheap perfume. His face was made up in what was clearly women's makeup and he laughed in a way that made it known he thought little of you. Naruto looked at him and took an instant dislike, but he pushed that aside, determined to not judge someone based on first impressions and give everyone a fair hearing. The man sized up Naruto and laughed. Who are you supposed to be? Which of you men are in charge of this new village? He said, dismissing Naruto and glancing from Mabry to Jiraiya. Mabry looked at the man with disgust. He'd met this type before, and he loathed men like this. Naruto cleared his throat. I am the leader of Tengoku, mister? He ended the statement with a polite question, to allow the man time to respond. The man laughed and sneered at Naruto. How interesting. I did not expect someone so young. And quote. He scoffed and then waved his hand at his 4 sons. These are my boys. We would like to set up a branch in your city. We run our specialty shops in almost every major city in the Western lands. It honors your village for me to even consider building there. I expect lenient property taxes because I will provide employment and inject funds, shall we say, into your hands. And quote. He smirked at Naruto. Naruto looked perplexed. What sort of specialty shop do you run? The man laughed. We offer a wide variety of herbal remedies for many ailments as well as massages for very specific clientele. Jiraiya looked at him scornfully. You run an opium den and a brothel. And quat. While he didn't mind a few beautiful women around, this was not the way to start the kind of village that Naruto wanted. He did want to see how Naruto handled the situation though. Naruto looked startled. He looked from the man to his 4 grinning sons for any sign that Jiraiya's words were not true, but they just laughed it off. He looked at the patriarch and cleared his throat. We don't want your shop in our village, but thank you for your interest. And quat. Naruto did in his best imitation of what he thought old man Hokage would have said. In truth, he wanted to jump up and point at them and tell them to get the hell out of there now, but that wouldn't give the right impression of his, and that word was still scary to him. His village. The swarthy man looked amused. I see. Many village leaders are not wise enough to accept our initial offer, but I guarantee that they always take the follow-up offer. Naruto spun on heel and walked out the tent without letting the man finish. Mabry grinned. I don't think we're very interested in your next offer. Feel free to take your time and pack up your things, but do leave soon. Naruto's friends and mentors filed out behind him. He breathed deeply as he waited for them to catch up. He turned to Jiraiya. Something about him just smelled off. Jiraiya nodded. Not a nice man or a nice family. Extremely wealthy, of course. Kakashi chimed in. There are 5 or 6 such wealthy, yet questionable, families in this encampment. Jiraiya's spy network is not infallible. Such men will always find a way to wiggle their way in where they see opportunity. Senji looked angry. We're trying to build an honest village here. I don't understand why they think we'd welcome an opium den and a brothel. Nagi shrugged. The opium den, I agree with you, but a brothel is just another business. Many villages I've encountered that are perfectly peaceful have such a place, once the women aren't forced to work there. Jiraiya agreed. Very common. But that man in particular would be a dark mark in our village. He could have been running an ice cream shop, and I still wouldn't have liked him coming along. Naruto shivered. Okay, next tent? Nagi looked around. Hey, where did we lose the girls? Kakashi smiled. They stopped about 2 wagons back, playing with the babies. And quat. Twin babies that were probably the cutest either girl had ever seen, in fact. Naruto smiled and headed for the next tent. 2 men watched from the shadows outside the opium dealer's tent. They turned to each other, then melted back into the shadows and snuck out of the encampment. They crept and snuck their way over the crest of the hill into the nearby forest. The sound of an owl hooting as they entered the woods made them stop in their tracks. It's us, the man whispered urgently into the night. An arrow whizzed close to his head. He growled up into the trees. What the hell? That was a warning. It's us is not the damn password. And quat. A voice floated down from the trees. The 2 men grumbled and stalked deeper into the woods. After a few minutes they came upon a camp. Around a campfire sat roughly 37 men. They laughed as one told a tale of treasure and plundering, for this was a camp of thieves. At what was clearly the seat of power in the camp sat a tall brown-skinned man. His hair tied back in ponytail, a short beard and mustache on his young face. Small gold hooped earrings and a gold ring with a symbol of a wolf were the only 2 pieces of jewelry he wore. His eyes though seemed to watch everything and nothing at the same time. The 2 men approached him and the other men grew quiet. My lord, it was as our snitch said. There are 5 or 6 very wealthy wagons in the encampment. There are no guards, but there are a few ninja in the camp. They seem to be picking people to take somewhere. And quat. One of the men reported. The leader sat back. Ninja? What are they doing this far west? I do not know, my lord, the same man responded. One thief stood up. It matters not. Many riches lay in those wagons. We will raid the camp and take what we want and be gone by dawn. The other thieves looked like they were about to cheer, and would have probably, if a dagger hadn't flipped through the air and sliced the loud thief's left ear off. His hand clutched the bleeding side of his head and he fell to his knees. The leader stood up and walked over to retrieve his knife. Did I miss the meeting where you were chosen for my position, Krishna? As he spoke his eyes took on a dangerous steely color. No, my lord Ali, the thief gritted out through his teeth. His anger barely kept in control. Ali looked around at his men. No one should think for 1 second that they can presume to decide when we attack, nor whom. He sat back down. The fact that there are ninja in the camp complicates things. It means we could lose men. There are only a few of us here who could fight toe-to-toe with a ninja. We need a much more solid plan than we attack at dawn. The men smiled wickedly. The leader of this band of thieves was always chosen not just for his skills, but for his cunning. The Spirit Wolf clan will show those fat merchants that the common man needs to live as well. Here is how we will do it. Naruto took a lot of convincing to stop interviews for the night and continue in the morning. He settled into Mabry's wagon and closed his eyes, hands behind his head thinking. It had taken a lot to hear all the stories his new citizens told him. They were tales of suffering, abuse and woe. Many were running, some looking to start over. This part of the world was much larger than the civilized part he came from, and many things he took for granted simply weren't true here. Naruto hoped he could do right by these people. He now had citizens for his village. People who weren't warriors or warriors in training. Nagi and Senji had stayed up talking, and Sakura and Hiraka were still in the camp somewhere. Naruto closed his eyes and hoped that tomorrow he would make good decisions. Just before dawn, when most people's guard is down, 40 thieves entered the camp. They split up into 6 teams. 5 went after the target wagons, and 1 went into various normal wagons, taking hostages and tying them up. Ali's plan was simple: if there was trouble, they'd use the hostages as collateral to escape. His 2 scouts had told him the ninja were all around the massive colored wagon, so once they were quiet and avoided that wagon they should be okay. What Ali did not know was that Sakura and Hiraka had fallen asleep by the kindly single mother with the cute twin babies. So when the thieves snuck into the tent to tie up some more hostages, they didn't meet an unsuspecting civilian, but 2 very angry kunoichi. Sakura felt the malevolent presence in the tent and was standing in a flash, a mere second after Hiraka did. They saw 4 shadows, all of whom seemed to be startled to find them there. A glint of steel in one of the intruders' hands warned Sakura that they were armed with knives. She glanced at Hiraka, who had snaked her scarf out and was in a ready-to-attack position. As Hiraka lashed out with the scarf, Sakura turned and picked up the sleeping twins in either hand and dove out the back of the tent. The mother woke up to the sight of Hiraka fending off the intruders and her babies nowhere to be seen. She screamed loudly, loud enough to wake up the entire camp. Ali cursed in his native tongue. He was sneaking up on a fat swarthy merchant when the scream awoke his target. The man lunged for a sword, but to no avail. Ali buried his dagger in the base of the man's neck and turned to his 2 followers at the door. "Take what you can from this tent and meet us back base camp. I will have to go and deal with the ninja," he said as he strode out the door. "What's going on?" Naruto asked as he rushed out of the wagon with his bow staff. Nagi and Senji landed on the ground next to him. Kakashi appeared as well. "It seems we have intruders in the camp. Thieves." Naruto's eyes grew dark. Thieves? Someone is stealing from these people? All he could think of was the stories of persecution and the unjust way of life these people he had accepted as citizens had been subjected to. "They're all over the camp." And quat. Jiraiya said as he threw 2 men to the ground in front of Naruto. "They wear the symbol of the Spirit Wolf clan, a feared clan of thieves from far south." Naruto nodded and made the sign for Kage Bunshine. He made 50 clones and sent them into the wagons and tents, searching for the thieves. Within seconds the sounds of fighting could be heard. Naruto's face looked startled. "I lost a few clones. There's a tall man walking towards us. He's defending the other thieves from my clones. They're all running away." Mabry appeared as well with a single thief over his shoulder. "They certainly use a fighting style I've never seen before." No sooner did he say that than 2 of Naruto's clones flew backwards into the clearing where they stood in front of Mabry's wagon and puffed out of existence. The tall man Naruto had spoken about entered the clearing. His eyes darted to the thieves on the ground. "I've come for my men. Release them and we can forget this happened." And quat. Ali said calmly. Nagi and Senji looked at each other and lunged at the man. Senji drew his sword and swung, Nagi sweeping for the man's legs. Ali however ducked under Senji's swing and twisted in mid-air over Nagi's swipe. His hand reached for his belt and pulled on a hilt. A long sword uncoiled from around his waist and lashed out at Senji, who just managed to block it with the broad side of his sword. Jiraiya cursed under his breath. "An Urumi." Kakashi nodded. "That means." Ali landed on his feet and twirled the sword around him a few times. "My name is Ali of the Spirit Wolf clan and I am a master of Kalaripiatu. Please do not force me to fight further. I will just take my men and leave." Naruto growled and jumped into the fray. He used the bow as a spear, poking towards Ali, who turned and pivoted, slashing the bow aside with his flexible sword. Senji came from the side with both of his swords, twirling them impossibly fast and slicing towards Ali. His slashes too were deflected by the skilled thief. Ali then started to press his attack, the sword snaking around Naruto's bow and slicing into his shoulder. He grimaced as he felt the cut as a burn, but his healing ability was already working close the cut. Senji had so far managed to avoid being injured, but barely. He was sweating. Never had he been so hard pressed by a fellow swordsman. Despite himself and the circumstances, Senji couldn't help but smile. This is what a true swordsman was like. Senji was finally being pushed past his limits. Ali flicked his wrist and the Urumi snaked around him like a tornado. He flicked it again and extended his arm and suddenly the razor-sharp tornado was racing towards Senji. He saw it in time though and Flash stepped backwards towards the wagon and away from the fight. "Damn," he said, panting. "He's so fast." Kakashi agreed. He'd never seen someone fight so fluidly as that before. Naruto is only surviving at this point because of his healing ability. Oh, and also because Ali doesn't seem to want to kill anyone. Senji looked incredulous at Kakashi but then he looked closer at the fight. Kakashi was right. The master thief was twirling the coiled sword effortlessly and with much more skill than Naruto was using the bow staff. but he was clearly holding back on many openings to seriously injure the blonde ninja. Naruto seemed to notice this as well. "Why are you holding back?" he asked as he swung the bow staff at the thief's head. Ali ducked and turned on the balls of his feet. He stood and lashed out in a kick that they all swore ended with his knee in his own face, his leg straight as an arrow. The kick did land, however, and sent Naruto flying backwards. He managed to flip in midair and landed on his feet though. "I have no desire to kill children. Ali said. Jiraiya grunted. He had suspected as much. The Spirit Wolf clan was mostly feared by rich criminals and merchants who cheated their customers. There were more than a few tales of the clan helping the less fortunate. A band of cutthroats they most certainly weren't. So why were they here robbing these unfortunates? "Why are you here, Ali?" Jiraiya asked. "Most of these people have no money." Ali nodded and swished his sword in front of him. "There were 5 or 6 wealthy men we've been following. They were scattered throughout your little operation here. We were supposed to be in and out, but it seems some of my men ran into your female ninja." Jiraiya nodded. It made sense. "I'd let you leave with your men, but it's really up to Naruto here." Naruto looked over at Ali. The man had to be in his early 30s, and he was so skilled with a sword. "Why live a life like this?" Naruto asked him, dropping his attack posture. "Why live as a thief?" Ali smirked at the young man before him. He recognized that look. "I don't need your pity, boy. This life has been my family's life for generations. It is a proud tradition that I am honored to carry on. The Spirit Wolf clan is a proud clan, a proud family." Nagi and Senji nodded. They understood what Ali meant. Tradition and honor. Naruto shook his head. "Come with us." "What?" Jiraiya, Kakashi, Senji and Nagi all said simultaneously. Naruto smiled warmly at Ali. "The old man used to say you never really know someone until you fight them. You've got a good heart, Ali. You should come with us." Ali looked baffled. He took a step backwards as if expecting some sort of trick. But the smile on Naruto's face was genuine and open. He was shocked. "What are you talking about? Go where?" Ali asked. Naruto launched into an explanation of his village, without giving away its location after a hard stare from Jiraiya, and again extended his invitation. Ali laughed. "What's your name?" he asked Naruto, not unkindly. "My name is Naruto. These are my friends Senji and Nagi. And this is my sensei, Jiraiya, and our friend Mabry." Ali's eyes took them all in. "I've heard of most of you. As I said, I have no wish to fight you. I will just take my men and leave." He turned towards Naruto. "Naruto, I wish you all the best for your village. My clan, however, does not stay in one place. Often the criminals we steal from look for revenge, and it would not do for us to bring such troubles to your village." Naruto grinned even wider. "You've just proven my point even more. You worry more for the ordinary people than you do yourself. You belong in our village," he declared. Ali grinned. Naruto's smile was infectious. "I do not think so, Naruto, but thank you." The 3 thieves on the ground began to get up. Kakashi helped one to his feet. They eyed the ninja around them suspiciously as their leader motioned for them to come over. A woman's scream shattered the clearing as 5 thieves ran into it. One had a woman in front of him, a blade pressed against her neck. Chasing them were Sakura and Hiraka, and one other girl that didn't surprise Kakashi in the least. "Krishna!" Ali barked out. The man holding the woman turned and snarled at Ali. "Release that woman now," Ali commanded. Krishna sneered and looked to the woman. Naruto saw it happen in slow motion, as if he had the Sharingan itself. But then the horrible moments in life always do seem to go more slowly. Krishna sliced the woman's throat open and flung her body to the side. "I'm tired of you telling me what to do," he yelled at Ali. "Just because your father was leader doesn't mean you should have been. I will take what is mine." He lunged at Ali with what looked like a dagger, but its hilt was shaped so that it needed to be held like a fist punching. Ali sidestepped and pulled out a similar looking dagger. The two of them began battling each other in the middle of the clearing. Naruto appeared at the dead woman's side and picked up her body. He Hirashined back to the wagon and rested her down, angry and sad at his inability to prevent her death. The other 4 thieves came under the full wrath of the women who were chasing them. Hiraka stood low to the ground, one leg extended forward, the other pulled underneath herself, her scarf held between her hands. She sprung forward and lashed out with the scarf, the material smacking the first dagger-wielding thief in the face. He snarled at her and slashed wildly with the dagger to no avail. Sakura ducked under a dagger thrust and punched the first man in the solar plexus. Remembering what Tsunade taught her, the secret of the Futi no Kiwami, she used that double punch on the man. The result was the thief being flung out of the clearing, out of the camp, and halfway to the forest. The third girl fighting was not someone that Naruto knew, but she was doing pretty well. She was using a bow to send arrow after arrow at the 2 remaining thieves. They had so far gotten 2 arrows in their legs, but kept running anyway. Kakashi said out loud to no one in particular, "That's Calamity. And Quat." Calamity threw down her larger bow and pulled out 2 short crossbows from her belt. A torrent of small bolts flew like senbone towards the thieves, hitting them in their back, knocking them to the ground. Even from this distance, Kakashi could see that they weren't mortally wounded. Either they were very lucky or Calamity was a dead shot. He saw her grinning at him and he smiled, assuming the latter. As the girls finished their fights, all eyes went to the battle between Ali and Krishna. It had become a vicious dance. As good as Krishna seemed to be, Ali was clearly a master. Nicks and cuts adorned Krishna's arms, while Ali had barely one or two. Krishna in desperation flung the dagger at Ali and then made some hand signs that none of the ninja gathered there recognized. He breathed out a steady stream of fire that formed a wolf. The flame wolf raced towards Ali. Ali again pulled out his coiled sword and twirled it madly, too fast for the eye to see. The flame wolf was dissipated by the assault. Krishna fell to his knees in defeat, panting. Ali's eyes grew cold and he made some hand signs himself. He then pointed at Krishna. A torrent of ghostly wolves appeared from behind Ali out of thin air and sprinted towards Krishna. They passed through him, each taking what looked like piece of Krishna's soul with them. As the final one passed through him, he fell to the ground dead, his skin white and drawn tight over a skeletal body. Naruto stood in shock. Nagi and Senji as well wiped sweat away from their foreheads. The man they had fought against was in a different class from them entirely. Kakashi saw Naruto's expression and tried to explain. Ali is a master of Kalarippayattu Naruto. It is probably the oldest martial art in the world. It's called the mother of all martial arts. But that aside, he is at a master level. I doubt even I would have an easy time facing him in battle. What move was that? Naruto asked. Kakashi knew what Naruto was referring to, but didn't have the answer. That move you called it Naruto, is a secret of my clan. What Krishna did was abominable and I apologize. That woman, he said with sadness. Did she have a family? Sakura turned towards Ali angrily. Not sure of what just happened, but knowing the answer to that question. She did, a boy, 7 years old. Ali nodded. According to our custom that boy is now my clan's responsibility. We will raise him. Please bring him to me. Hiraka snapped her cloth. Hell no, Shabi. She adopted a defensive stance. Sakura herself also took a ready stance, both quite incensed. Wait. Jiraiya interjected. Naruto, this is the custom of their clan, of their region. It would be remiss of us to deny them the chance to atone. Naruto growled. They lost that right when they killed this woman. Why should I allow them to take her son? That just makes no sense to me. Ali nodded. We are responsible for that child's safe upbringing now since we robbed him of it. Naruto shook his head. But we have an orphanage, and a new village. He would be better off with us. He'd be safer for one, and have a chance to grow up with other kids his own age for another. Ali stood firm. No, this is my clan's honor at stake. You cannot seek to deprive us of this right. The boy will grow up as a spirit wolf. There is no more talking on this. Naruto growled, waves of chakra rolling off of him. Ali felt it hitting him like the heat of the sun. He dare not show it on his face, but this level of chakra was unheard of, and frightening. What was Naruto? We will do as I say, thief. And quat. Naruto growled. His voice sounded vaguely hoarse and his eyes gave off a faint red glow. Jiraiya rested his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Calm down, Naruto. We can work out a compromise. Ali raised an eyebrow. Compromise? How? Jiraiya smiled. Well, Naruto insists that the boy come to Tengoku. You insist your clan raises him. Why not open a guild house in Tengoku and staff it with 1 or 2 of your men? Your trusted men, of course. That way the boy can still be raised as a spirit wolf clan member. Sakura shouted. No way. They just killed this woman in cold blood, and now we're just going to hand her son over to her murderers? Ali shook his head. Krishna was a bad seed. He and his friends have always been a problem for my clan. Now that they're gone, the rest of my men I trust completely. He turned to Jiraiya and Naruto. I do not understand why you are so willing to welcome a den of thieves into your new village. It sounds like you are trying to create an idyllic place, but the world does not allow such a place to exist. My clan has found a way to survive out here in the unnamed country, but we are still thieves. Jiraiya chimed in. You don't rob the poor and destitute. There are rumors of your clan assisting people in times of need, robbing the rich, the criminal and giving money to the poor. You cannot say that you are bad people. Hiraka and Sakura slowly began to let down their guard. Based on what Jiraiya was saying, perhaps they were misjudging the tall brown-skinned man in front of them. Ali cleared his throat. For 7 generations my clan has roamed the Western world. Not always has our reputation been thus. It depends on who leads. Nagi interjected. Right now you lead. What do you intend to lead your men to? Ali stared at the warriors gathered around him. The 3 clan members he rescued were helping the ones the girls had chased and subdued. He turned to Jiraiya and Naruto. I accept this compromise. I myself will come to Tengoku with 2 of my clan. We will set up our guild house there and then I shall leave. Once the boy is raised by us I have no problem with where. But he must come with us often. Part of living as a spirit wolf clan member is traveling as a clan. Naruto grinned. Then in that case, I'm glad to welcome you to my village. Ali shook his head. You don't know what you may have just called upon your village, but alright. The Spirit Wolf clan will be based out of Tengoku from this day onward. Konoha Forest. Deep in the forest outside of Konoha, Danzo stood in a clearing waiting for the person he was meeting to arrive. This meeting was far too important and secretive to take place inside the walls of Konoha. He knew that surrounding him were 10 of his best root ninja for safety. He may be doing a deal here, but by no means did that mean he trusted the man. No sooner did he think it than the man appeared, alone. Danzo was no fool though, and knew the man was not alone, and had brought along at least as many men as he had. Danzo, the diminutive man in front of him said. Aniki. Danzo nodded back. The third Tenshikage was a small man, but not one to be underestimated. Let's get right to business, shall we? Aniki said. Your plan is going well? Yes, Danzo said. Our assassination of the daimyo went perfectly. My root had infiltrated his guard and left big enough gaps for our assassin to execute him believably. His successor is being chosen as we speak from the worthless royal court, and then I expect we will be ordered to attack Iwa. Aniki nodded. Good. I'll have my army ready. Good. We are still weak after the attack from Orochimaru a year ago. But those bleeding hearts in Konoha are useless to me. They must be purged. My root runs deep and strong. Konoha will rebuild once all remnants of the old school of thought are burned from memory. Danzo claimed quietly. It's an ambitious plan, Danzo. Just remember our agreement. Aniki said menacingly. He trusted Danzo no more than he did a scorpion in his shoe. I shall stand by my word. Our battle will serve to remove the useless ninja of Konoha, and I will be inviting the entire Fire Country Royal Court to witness the battle. And I shall do the same. The Earth Country Royal Court will come to witness. Aniki said. You take care of my problem and I'll take care of yours. No longer shall these fools run our affairs. Danzo said, turning and disappearing into the forest. Aniki watched him go with distaste, but he did admire the man's audacity and planning. Soon there will be no more daimyo, no more pandering. We'll see how your village fares with no one holding us back, Danzo, he whispered just under his breath before disappearing back from whence he came. Tengoku Tsunade watched in amazement as the newer batch of Naruto clones tore through the construction. They had averaged a floor a day on the tower, the pipes were run all over the lots they had planned out, and electricity was now coming into the main tower. The newer clones were stronger because Naruto himself had grown stronger. All the experience they had gained by building everything in this village was showing too, as all the work seemed to get done faster and easier. Guerrera had started work on a new building for the academy. His building designs were all very similar. White walls, huge Gothic columns. The whole heavenly theme permeated into all the buildings he had planned. He even drew up some plans on renovating and expanding the orphanage that he wanted to show Mabry when he returned. Tsunade, however, was more focused on the need for a proper medical clinic. They had over 200 children in the village already, and a large portion of them were training to be warriors. They were going to need that clinic soon. According to the map, she could see where Guerrera planned to erect the clinic, and it was right next to the academy. That was good, as far as Tsunade was concerned. She wanted some kids to learn how to be medics. The patriarch of the Kazumi clan walked over to her. Tsunade, I had a thought. She stopped looking at the papers and waited for him to continue. I know Jiraiya was trying to figure out a way to protect the village better. He booby-trapped the wind tunnel that brings us here. But I may actually know someone who can help. Tora said. Tsunade smiled. Really? How? He's an inventor I met a few times over the course of my family's travels. He's a bit on the crazy side, but he is a genius I've never met the like of. He merges chakra and technology to invent. Well, crazy things. And this island, being what it is, we need a crazy invention to protect it. The old man said, smiling all the while, hoping that Tsunade would approve of his idea. He blushed brightly. He knew Tsunade was younger than him, though not as young as that illusion technique made her look, but she sure was pretty to look at. Tsunade rubbed her chin. Sounds good to me. How do you intend to find him? Tora smiled and put 4 rocks down on the marble floor. He made a series of signs and then touched them. The rocks became owls that flapped their wings and waited for his instructions. Find the inventor Kenichi Tenma. Give him and no one else this paper. Tora held out a small piece of paper to each of the owls. Tsunade frowned. How are they going to find him? Ah, but they're not ordinary owls, they're tracking owls. They can find anyone once I give them a name. But I made 4 to send them in the 4 different directions to maximize our chance for success anyway. Tora replied. Okay, good, Tsunade said. Now about your eyes fixating on my breasts. She glared menacingly at Tora, who yelped and scampered away. Tsunade smiled and went back to her work, planning the clinic for Tengoku. Well, it seems like you've made it to the end of part 4 too, Naruto. Tenshikage, aka, what if Naruto created his own village? Well, I have to get started on part 4 to Shina Chiku's first adventure, so I hope all of you have a wonderful day/night. Bye.